Imagine a painting, one of the most famous portraits of its age, a symbol of beauty and aristocratic grace. Now imagine it simply vanishing. Not in a blaze of glory or a violent raid, but quietly, meticulously, almost respectfully removed from its frame. And then, imagine it staying gone for a quarter of a century, carried not by a brute, but by a ghost, kept by a shadow, held hostage by a man who moved through the gilded ballrooms and foggy London streets like he belonged, because in every way that mattered, he did. This isn't just about a stolen masterpiece, it's about the man who stole it, and how he made an entire empire look the other way for decades. His name was Adam Worth, and the official story often makes him sound like a dashing rogue, a gentleman thief straight out of fiction. But the truth was far more unsettling. He was a man who understood the fundamental flaw in human perception, that we rarely look for the devil in plain sight, especially when he's impeccably dressed and carries himself with quiet dignity. Worth began life far from the gilded cages of high society. Born in Germany, arriving in America as a boy, orphaned, he learned early that the world was a battlefield. The American Civil War provided his first great lesson in deception. He lied about his age and served, but quickly learned that survival often meant choosing your own battles. After the war, he found his calling in the chaos of New York City, graduating from pickpocket to mastermind. He engineered bank heists with a cool precision that unnerved even hardened criminals. What he mastered wasn't brute force, but the art of the flawless distraction, the subtle misdirection, the almost invisible entry and exit. When the heat grew too intense in the States, he simply vanished, resurfacing in London, a new city ripe for his particular genius. Here's the thing about Adam Worth. He understood that the best way to hide a criminal enterprise was to build a legitimate one directly on top of it. He established clubs, gambling houses, even an international fencing operation, all while cultivating an image of a respectable, if somewhat enigmatic businessman. He wore fine clothes, spoke softly, and never ever resorted to unnecessary violence. He built an empire, a vast network of thieves, forgers, and fences, all answering to him. The police knew of a shadowy crime boss, a Napoleon of crime even, but they could never quite put a face to the name. He was too careful, too subtle, too polite. Then came the painting. Thomas Gainsborough's portrait of Georgiana, Duchess of Devonshire. It was more than just a piece of art. It was a legend, recently rediscovered after decades, causing a sensation in London society. It was on display at Agnew & Sons Gallery in Mayfair, insured for an astronomical sum. For Adam Worth, it wasn't merely about the money, though he would demand a fortune for its return someday. It was about the challenge, the ultimate test of his system, his quiet defiance of the world that thought it could contain him. On a cold night in March 1876, Worth and his associates executed the perfect crime. There was no crashing through windows, no desperate flight, just a quiet entry, a careful unhooking, and a silent retreat into the swirling fog of London. The next morning, the world woke to an impossible truth. The Duchess was gone. A scandal, a mystery. Police were baffled. Pinkerton detectives were brought in from America, but even they found nothing. The painting had simply evaporated. But here's the twist that few people grasp. Adam Worth didn't sell the painting. He kept it for 25 years. He carried it with him from London to New York to Chicago, hidden in false-bottom trunks and secret compartments. It became his strange, silent companion. What does it mean to possess a masterpiece in secret? To live under the weight of such an enormous lie? It was his trophy, certainly, a constant reminder of his unparalleled brilliance. But it was also a burden, a chain binding him to a secret world, isolating him even as he moved through polite society. He had married, even had children, raising them in an atmosphere of respectability that stood in stark contrast to his true life. He was a loving father, a devoted husband, a generous friend, all while the stolen Duchess rested, unseen, in his possession. The quiet, relentless pressure of maintaining such a colossal deception, the constant vigilance, the inability to truly drop his guard, must have been immense. It was a wound that never truly healed, a regret that whispered in the quiet hours. His downfall, when it came, wasn't for the Duchess. It was for something far more mundane, almost a careless mistake. In 1892, in Liège, Belgium, during a botched, impulsive robbery, Adam Worth was finally caught. He was imprisoned, and his vast empire began to crumble without his steady hand. It was in prison that William Pinkerton, the legendary detective, finally found him. Pinkerton, who had chased Worth for years, now met the man not as a quarry, but almost as a peer, admiring his genius even as he sought to bring him to justice. Worth eventually served his time. Upon his release, haggard and aged, he made a deal with Pinkerton. For a fraction of the original insurance payout, he would reveal the painting's location and ensure its safe return. The Duchess, after a quarter-century of silent exile, was finally restored to its rightful place. The world was stunned, not just by the painting's reappearance, but by the true identity of the man who had spirited it away. Adam Worth died quietly in London in 1902, a broken, forgotten man in a small, rented room. The newspapers gave him a short notice, acknowledging his past exploits, but missing the deeper story. He had fooled an entire country, not through brute force, but through an almost intimate understanding of human nature, a quiet mastery of the unspoken rules. He walked among them, ate with them, lived beside them, and all the while, he held one of their most cherished treasures hostage, a secret known only to him. But here's the question. What was the true cost of such a brilliant, secretive life? Was the thrill of the deception worth the crushing weight of its constant concealment? What does it mean to gain the world, yet lose yourself in the process of perpetually becoming someone else? One else.